To me, this issue is very important. I became familiar with Operation Underground Railroad a little over almost 2 years ago when a piece of software that I'd been working on with a group that basically identified child pornographers, those that are trading child pornography. I was asked to come and speak, and I said, well, you know, before I do that, I want to know who I'm speaking for. And so I met up with Tim, and we talked about what his efforts were to go out and rescue children. From my standpoint, rescuing children is huge. It's so important. And I look at Elizabeth and I think, you know, what a blessing to have our child back. For all of those that are being trafficked out there, for those parents that are missing their children, those that have been kidnapped. In many cases, they haven't been kidnapped. They may have even been sold by their parents. But for those that are missing their children, you know, what a great blessing to have them rescued and returned to their home. For those that are caught in the industry, you know, prostitution has been around since the world began. And this issue has been a scourge, a curse, whatever you might want to call it. But the exploitation of children is something that really is not acceptable. And as I go around and I have an opportunity of speaking, prevention is one of my biggest pushes, because if we can really engage in preventing it from happening in the first place, we don't have to have rescue teams, we don't have to have OUR, and this issue can change. And so, you know, both Elizabeth and I have had wonderful opportunities of speaking with just incredible people that really want to make a difference. And as I have engaged with Rotary and other groups, you know, they want to become involved. The good people of the community don't want to see this happening to their children. And one of my mottos is be prepared, not scared. And if we can be prepared, if our children can be prepared for what might be the most traumatic event in their life, what a blessing that could be for them. You know, as Elizabeth returned home, we had so many things happen. We had a sex offender show up on our front doorstep. And the day we returned from our first vacation, indicating that he said he'd helped Elizabeth mentally, and it got really weird, and we asked him to leave. And then I found out that he'd just gotten out of jail the day before. And then Elizabeth, we were in church one day, and Elizabeth was cornered by somebody. You really ran away. You really loved Brian Mitchell. And to see, you know, what impact this had on her life and what impact Brian Mitchell had on her life, things have changed drastically. You know, I think that we are at a standpoint that we can no longer shove the issue of sexual exploitation under the carpet, whether it's in trafficking, whether it's in you know, domestic violence, child abuse. There are too many implications to sweep it under the carpet. The issue of pornography is absolutely huge. I mean, it impacts us in ways that we in the community don't even understand. When you talk about trafficking, we recently had some prosecutors and some child advocates come from Colombia. They came up for a training, and I was very interested in understanding what role pornography played in this whole dialogue, in this whole issue. And they said 100% of the time it plays a big role in both the Johns or the buyers of the sex trafficking, in their going from watching pornography to the step of acting out on it. Certainly Brian David Mitchell was exposed to pornography the whole part of his life. His father thought there wasn't anything harmful about it. He loved it. Mitchell loved it. You know, he exposed Elizabeth to it. He exposed his children to it. He, was basically, he molested a girl next door when he was young. He found it exciting to try and stick his hand down a girl's shirt in high school to see what he could get away with as they were out trying to find a new shelter in California. They were climbing up this hillside and there was kind of a crevice, and Mitchell asked Elizabeth to crawl inside, and as she went inside, she saw this pornographic magazine that was just disgusting to her, and she hopped out of there. He says, "So what's your problem?" And she says, "Well, I just didn't like what was in there." And he went in there, and she said for 4 days he devoured that magazine. And the next thing that he did was go out and try to abduct another girl. So there's a very slippery slope with regard to pornography, what it not only does to us, but what it leads us to. And understanding that and getting a grip on it. We can't pretend that it's not there. I feel that the younger we can talk to our children about it, the better prepared they are. To empower them does so much more than to scare them. And certainly parents, for the most part, do not want to scare their children. In fact, if they could, they would love to put a protective bubble over their child and just keep them from all of this nastiness and ugliness. But there is a way of talking about it. The LDS Church recently came out with a wonderful video. There's a wonderful group called Fight the New Drug that's presenting assemblies on the issue of pornography, not from a judgmental moral standpoint, but from a health issue, from a standpoint of what it actually does to relationships, to a person's productivity and their ability to move forward. So to me, we can't afford not to take the steps to address the issue of pornography. It's absolutely huge, and it impacts our families in ways that we will never know, because many times we don't have a clue. And the kids don't have a clue until they're at a point, in many cases, where they're addicted. There's an addiction there. The bottom line is, it's great to be with you. I'm glad to share this information with you tonight. But I hope that you will go back and talk to your children or your grandchildren about the issue of pornography, about the issue of sexual exploitation. I mean, what needs to happen is we need to draw a line in the sand, and that line represents a behavior. And our kids need to understand anyone that crosses that line, they need to have a plan of attack of what they can do to get away, to get out of that situation. It doesn't matter who it is. Could be the President of the United States, could be a teacher, could be a clergyman, it could be anyone, it could be a family member, somebody they trust, somebody they love. But they have to understand that when somebody crosses that line, they have to be able to do something, whether that's screaming, kicking, running, finding out who is a trusted adult that they can go to that will believe them when they tell them this issue. Because unfortunately, too many parents are in denial to think that this could happen in their family, that it could be a family member, a trusted person that they care so much about. The fact is that if we don't do something and we don't stop it there, there's going to be another victim and another victim. And where is it going to stop? The only time it's going to stop is when each one of us, stop it. So thank you so much for joining me tonight. And I hope that each one of you go home and you love your children and you prepare them, because looking back, if there was anything that I could have done to have helped Elizabeth, be prepared for that. I don't know if it could have made a difference, but it might have. And if we don't take the chance of preparing them for the might-haves, there are no guarantees in life. But what a difference. We prepare them in school for this wonderful future. Why not prepare them for perhaps one of the most traumatic events that could happen in their life, or to avoid the most traumatic event in their life? I mean, there couldn't be a more important gift.